My daughter sold my late wife's necklace to fund her girl's trip. She had no idea what was waiting. I noticed the empty velvet box on my dresser before I noticed anything else that morning. Empty. My wife had been dead for 14 months, and the one thing of hers I asked my daughter never to touch was already gone, sold apparently to fund a trip to Cabo. My name is Roger Callahan. I'm 66 years old. This is Wednesday, April 3rd, 7:15 in the morning, and I want to walk you through exactly how I found out because the order things happened in matters more than you'd think. My wife Susan died 14 months earlier, ovarian cancer, 9 months from diagnosis to the end. Before she died, she made very specific requests about a few of her belongings, things she wanted distributed a certain way once she was gone. Most of it went smoothly. Her wedding ring went to our son Michael for his future wife someday. Her reading collection went to the local library in her name. But one piece she was firm about above everything else, a sapphire and diamond necklace her own mother had given her, passed down for 3 generations, and Susan wanted it to eventually go to our granddaughter Emma when she turned 18, held safely by me until then. Our daughter, Kimberly, 31 years old, knew this. She'd been in the room when Susan explained it clearly, weeks before she passed, holding that necklace in her thin hands and making both of us promise it would wait for Emma. I kept that necklace in a small velvet box on my dresser, not locked away in a safe deposit box the way maybe I should have, because some part of me liked seeing it every morning, a small physical reminder of Susan still sitting in our bedroom. That Wednesday morning, April 3rd, I reached for my reading glasses on the dresser and noticed the velvet box sitting open. Empty. I stood there for a long moment, genuinely confused before the confusion turned into something colder. I searched the room first, thinking maybe I'd moved it myself and forgot, though some part of me already knew that wasn't true. I checked drawers, checked my closet, checked under the bed like a man looking for keys rather than a piece of his dead wife's jewelry. Then I called Kimberly. "Hey Dad," she answered, voice bright, background noise suggesting she was somewhere loud, maybe a store. "Kimberly, do you know anything about your mother's sapphire necklace?" A pause, just slightly too long. "What about it? It's not in the box on my dresser." Another pause, and this one told me everything before she said a single word. "Dad, okay, don't be mad, but I sold it. I found a good buyer, an estate jewelry place downtown, and honestly, Dad, it was just sitting there collecting dust. I needed the money for the girl's trip to Cabo next month, and I figured Mom wouldn't have minded. She always wanted me to have fun, you know that." I sat down on the edge of the bed, phone pressed hard against my ear, feeling something in my chest go completely still. "Your mother specifically wanted that necklace to go to Emma. You were in the room when she said that." "Dad, Emma's 4, she's not going to remember any of this or even care about some old necklace for at least 14 more years. I really needed the cash now, and this seemed like the practical choice." I didn't yell. I want you to understand that, because what came out of my mouth next was quiet, controlled, though my hands were shaking. "How much did you sell it for?" $2,200, she said, and I could hear something in her tone that suggested she thought that number should reassure me somehow, like a fair price made the betrayal smaller. $2,200. I sat there doing math I never expected to need. Susan's grandmother had purchased that necklace in 1952. Susan's mother had it appraised 8 years before she passed it down, a professional appraisal I still had a copy of somewhere in my filing cabinet. I remembered the number from that appraisal distinctly because it had surprised both Susan and me at the time. $18,000. That necklace had been appraised at $18,000 nearly a decade earlier, meaning its actual value now, accounting for gemstone appreciation and the piece's documented provenance, was almost certainly higher. My daughter had sold a family heirloom worth roughly $18,000 to $20,000 for $2,200 to a buyer who absolutely knew what she had and paid her a fraction of its worth, and she'd done it to fund a vacation. I didn't tell Kimberly about the appraisal right away. Something in me needed to think first, needed to understand exactly what had happened before I decided how to respond. I drove to the estate jewelry shop downtown that same afternoon, a place called Weatherstone Fine Estate Jewelry, and spoke with the owner, a careful, measured man named Preston Weatherstone who'd clearly built his business on knowing exactly what things were worth. "I'm looking for a piece my daughter may have sold you recently," I said. "A sapphire and diamond necklace, three-stone pendant style from the early 1950s. Preston's expression shifted slightly, professionally cautious. "I can't discuss specific transactions without proper documentation confirming ownership, sir. I'm sure you understand." I brought out the appraisal paperwork I'd retrieved from my filing cabinet before driving over, Susan's name clearly listed as the owner, along with photographs from years earlier, the necklace around her neck at our 30th anniversary dinner. Preston studied the documents carefully, then excused himself for several minutes, returning with the necklace itself, still sitting in a display case in the back of his shop, not yet sold to a customer. "Your daughter did sell me this piece 3 days ago," he confirmed. "I paid $2,200, which, given its actual condition and provenance, was frankly a conservative offer on my part, anticipating she might not fully understand its value. It was appraised at $18,000 nearly a decade ago." Preston nodded slowly. "That tracks with what I assessed as well. I'll be honest with you, sir, pieces like this come through occasionally from sellers who don't realize what they're holding, and there's a version of this business that takes full advantage of that gap. I try not to be that version, but I'm also not obligated to volunteer information a seller doesn't ask for." I asked him directly whether I could buy the necklace back, at whatever fair price reflected the piece's actual value, not the $2,200 my daughter had accepted. Preston thought about it for a moment, then named a figure, $9,000, explaining that as the rightful family owner recovering a piece sold under what was clearly a significant misunderstanding of its worth, he was willing to meet me roughly halfway between what he'd paid and what he'd eventually resell it for. I paid it, $9,000. I hadn't planned to spend that week to recover something that should have never left my dresser in the first place. Here's where the real confrontation happened, and it wasn't loud, though it was one of the harder conversations I've had with my daughter in 31 years of being her father. I invited Kimberly over for dinner that Friday, telling her nothing about the recovery, wanting to see what she'd say when given a second chance to be honest before I revealed what I already knew. Partway through dinner, I asked her again gently whether she understood what that necklace had actually been worth. "I mean, $2,200 felt like a lot for a random necklace, Dad, honestly. It was appraised at $18,000, Kimberly, nearly a decade ago." Preston Weatherstone, the man who bought it from you, confirmed that valuation still holds up today. The color drained from her face slowly, watching the math land in real time. 18,000, Dad, I had no idea, I swear I never would have. You never would have sold it for 2,200, or you never would have sold it at all, I asked, and I watched her sit with that question longer than she wanted to. "Both," she finally admitted quietly. "God, Dad, I feel sick." I told myself it was fine because it was just sitting in a box, but I never even considered what it might actually be worth. I was so focused on the trip, on needing that money fast, that I didn't think it through at all. I told her then what I'd done, that I'd already bought the necklace back for $9,000, money I hadn't planned to spend, to recover the one thing her mother had specifically asked to be protected for Emma. Kimberly cried at that table for a long time, real tears, not performative ones. "I'll pay you back, Dad, every dollar, I don't care how long it takes." I told her I appreciated that, but that money wasn't actually the point I needed her to understand. "Your mother trusted you in that room, Kimberly, when she was dying to protect something for her granddaughter. That trust mattered more to me than any dollar amount ever could. The money I can absorb. What I need to know is whether you understand why this actually hurt me." She did understand, eventually, once the shock wore off enough for real reflection to set in. Kimberly canceled her spot on the Cabo trip entirely, not because I asked her to, but because she said she couldn't enjoy it knowing how she'd funded it. She picked up extra shifts at her job for the following several months, and every single payment, small but consistent, showed up exactly like she promised, working her way back toward that $9,000. The necklace sits in a proper safe deposit box now, not a velvet box on my dresser, waiting for Emma's 18th birthday the way Susan originally intended. Kimberly asked to come with me when I finally placed it there, wanting, she said, to be part of protecting it properly this time instead of the reason it almost disappeared. I think about that empty velvet box sometimes, that first cold moment of confusion before the confusion turned into something heavier. Grief makes people do strange things sometimes, and I understood eventually that Kimberly's mistake came from carelessness and financial pressure rather than genuine cruelty. But understanding why something happened doesn't erase the weight of it happening. Some promises made to a dying woman in a quiet bedroom deserve more protection than a locked box can provide on its own. They deserve people who remember why the promise mattered in the first place, long after the person who asked for it is gone.